Hey guys, it's Sarah from Just My Typewriter, and I've been doing a little series here on the channel called Typewriter 101, trying to help new people who are buying typewriters get their first typewriter, learn how it works, and learn a little bit of basic maintenance. One of the most common questions I get asked here on YouTube, on Instagram, in my email, on the street from people who see me carrying a typewriter is how do I get ribbon for my typewriter? Ribbon is one of the easiest things to replace on a machine. It's also one of the first things to go on a machine. So other parts inside the typewriter were built to last really long. A ribbon was supposed to be replaced because it's like the ink cartridge in your printer. It does run out eventually. What's difficult about ribbon is it can come in a lot of different varieties. There's a lot of different resources out there, and everybody has a different opinion about good ribbon versus bad ribbon. So today I want to talk a little bit about buying ribbon types, the different types that there are, the resources you have for them, the different sizes of ribbon that exist, and also how to rewrap new ribbon around the original spools of your typewriter, which is my #1 suggestion when buying new ribbon. So let's get started with the basics. Typewriter ribbon is a little piece of cloth that is inked with different colors, and as your typewriter is operating, a type slug, which we talked about in the typewriter anatomy video, will be moved up by pressing down a key. It presses the back of the cloth, pushes the cloth forward to leave an imprint of that color on the page. So really, your typewriter is just imprinting color from a cloth onto a piece of paper. Now, ribbons can come in a few different varieties. You can have single colored ribbons, so they could be all black or all Technicolor. You can also get bicolor ribbons. Those are the ribbons that you typically see as black and red. Those are the ones you put on a lot of machines. It's a very classic typewriter look, and that's the most common ribbon that I find out there when I'm looking for ribbons on different sale sites. Another thing about ribbon is that it can come in a bunch of different materials. A lot of the original ribbons that were out there when typewriters were heavily used and the height of technology were cotton ribbons and silk ribbons. Now, these refer to the weave of the fabric that cloth is that has the color on it. A cotton ribbon is a pretty loose weave. A silk ribbon is a tighter weave. It's a different material, but nowadays the most common material used for modern reproductions of typewriter ribbon is nylon. So if you look at like the We Are Memory Keepers ribbons or Amazon ribbon replacements, those are typically nylon. It's again a bit of a tighter weave than you would get on a cotton ribbon. Each one of these ribbon types does have a different color depth to it. Now, I did some testing of different ribbon types in another video. I'll link that down below. But what I found was the cotton ribbon has a much bolder look to it. It looks like a grungy, antique, old, vintage looking typewriter font. The nylon ribbon is going to look a little bit lighter, and it's a little bit clearer of a print. Cotton ribbon tends to flake off, especially if it gets drier. It will allow the type slugs to kind of punch holes in it, in that ribbon, because it's a looser weave, and so it'll gunk up your type slugs a little bit quicker. It'll also probably need replaced a little bit quicker because you're going to be punching holes in it with your type slugs, but the look of it and the effect of it is something that's really interesting to look at. Silk ribbons are kind of in that similar category. I've never used a silk ribbon, but that is another ribbon option out there. It's a little bit more bougie of a ribbon option. And then of course you have the modern nylon ribbons. Now these tend to be really wet when you get them. When they soak them or saturate them with color, I tend to sit them out for a little bit just to dry them out so you're not staining your type slugs when you put it on your typewriter. But you can also get these in a ton of different colors. So the most typical ones that I suggest to people are listed on Amazon. This is your universal ribbon replacement. This is a nylon ribbon. You can get them in bicolor or single color. There are also a ton of options for nylon ribbons on eBay and Etsy, and you can get these in all kinds of color variety types. I've used FJA ribbons before, and if you're looking for a specialty ribbon, something that's maybe in cotton or silk, I highly suggest Lucas of Typewriter Chicago. His ribbons are fantastic. You can also buy ribbons in bulk, and I'll list that down below as well in case you're trying to re-ribbon, 85 typewriters for some reason. So that's the main typewriter ribbon types, how they're used on your machine. Another thing that comes up in questions a lot is the spools that the ribbons are on. Now, the spools are the little plastic or metal pieces that the ribbon is wrapped around. It is not adhered to that spool because it is a replaceable thing. A lot of typewriters kept the original metal spool in them, and you would just replace the ribbons. So when you're looking at a typewriter and it has the little black spools in it, keep those because those are original to the machine, or they're made of better quality than the modern remake ones that are out there now that are made of plastic. If your machine doesn't have a spool in it, the little thing that the ribbon's wrapped around, you might have to find a replacement for that. Now, the things to consider here are actually the internal peg pieces on those spools. The universal spools are able to kind of adjust to the different spool sizes on the insides of those, but it really does depend on the kind of machine you have, the sort of replacement you should be looking for those spools. For example, Remingtons have a very specific spool type. What I found about Remingtons, at least in my experience, is that they have one side that has a full spool on it and the other side that has a little tiny spool on it. So you really don't need both side spools. So if you're looking at a Remington typewriter, you might need to buy a Remington specific ribbon replacement, especially if you're trying to get a new spool for it. Another thing I've noticed is that ultra portables or lightweight portables, the kind that come with their own case topper or in those little leather cases, have a very different spool size than those that are on traditional portable typewriters. So for example, machines like my Skywriter, my Corsair Deluxe, other lightweight portable machines, their spools are actually smaller because they were trying to find ways to make that machine as compact as possible. So the spool itself and the cup that that spool goes in is a lot smaller than a typical universal replacement. And that can get more expensive than when you're trying to replace those. You want to look for an ultra portable or lightweight portable ribbon replacement. The size difference here really does matter because you can't get a universal replacement into the cup that is associated with those smaller portable machines. So when people ask me what kind of typewriter ribbon replacement should I get, I often ask what kind of model of machine they have because that can dictate the kind of ribbon replacement you need to get if you don't have the spools. If you're looking at an electric typewriter, these do have different ribbon compartments to them. A lot of the electric typewriters from the 60s and 70s will accept the typical modern universal ribbon replacement, but if you have something like a Corona-Matic, which is a Smith Corona type of machine, they have a cartridge that goes in there. If you have an IBM Selectric or any IBM machine really, you also need a cartridge-based ribbon. This is a different ribbon material. They still make these and you can find new old stock as well on the internet, but you're going to be looking for a cartridge rather than a spooled ribbon. So make sure you know what kind of model you have, especially with electrics, and look at examples of them online to find the right ribbon cartridge to go in that machine. So let's say you bought this new typewriter and it doesn't have the spools in it. You want to look for the model that is similar to yours, figure out what kind of replacement goes in there. Most portables, in my experience, that aren't Remingtons have the standard ribbon size in them. A universal replacement works great for those. I'm going to link down some links down there in the description box of ribbons that I've tried, ones I suggest. There's a ton of information out there. There's a ton of ribbon options out there. You can get them in just about any color, and that can be kind of fun as well. Those are all linked down below in the description. But let's say your typewriter does have the original spools with it. Now you can try a new technique called rewrapping your ribbon. Rewrapping your ribbon. Welcome to the voiceover part of this lesson. When you get a new typewriter ribbon and you plan to rewrap it, the first thing you have to do is remove the original spools from the typewriter and remove the old ribbon. Pick the side with the least amount of old ribbon on it and unwind the old stuff. This will take a while, but if it's already dried out, at least you won't get any ink on your hands. Once you have the spool free, you're going to unwrap the new ribbon from its replacement spool and find an edge. Original spools or older spools will either have a metal tab or a metal clamp that attaches to the ribbon and the spool itself. With a tab, you simply poke a hole in the ribbon with the tab. With a metal clip, you place the ribbon on the spool and place the clamp over it to hold it in place. Once you've secured one end, you're going to want to start winding the ribbon onto the spool. The goal here is to get to the other end of the new ribbon. Remove the old ribbon from your original spool and hook up the other end of your ribbon to it. I usually wind back over to the grommet if your ribbon has one, or enough to get a few rounds of ribbon over the connection point. Then you're going to put these spools back into the machine. My AC kicked on, but we're gonna keep on trucking. I tend to rewrap a lot of my ribbons. If a machine comes with the spools, I try to keep it with it, just so I know every single time that that spool is going to fit in there. Especially with metal spools on typewriters, I tend to keep those because they're hard to find. They can be expensive to replace. So if you have the original spool in your typewriter, try to keep it with the machine. That's why rewrapping ribbon is such a great technique for this. Now, when you're putting your ribbon into your typewriter, there's also a little bit of a trick to it. You want to make sure that you're getting your ribbon directly on the center of that post in your typewriter. Your typewriter will usually also have a ribbon reverse. We talked about this in the typewriter anatomy video. This reverses the direction that the ribbon is being pulled across the typewriter. You can flip this switch pretty easily. You might need to mess with this a little bit as you're inputting your new ribbon. Sometimes your ribbon is going to have the option to go through some little arms around that cup. So the cup where you put the ribbon, sometimes coming out of it, they have a little metal piece that sticks up and has a little slot in the middle. You want to slot your ribbon in there. Your ribbon is also going to go through what is called the ribbon vibrator. This is a little piece that slides up and down with your type slugs so that every time your type slug comes up, it does imprint onto the page. This often also has little arms around it that you have to make sure you put the ribbon in so it is always in line with where your type slugs are going to type. You want to make sure that this area is also clean. If your ribbon vibrator is moving up and down a dusty or dirty surface, it's not always going to be consistent in how it raises up and down. So make sure that this area is clean. If it's not clean, you can really easily go in there with a Q-tip and some mineral spirits or a toothbrush and some mineral spirits and then dry off that area just to make sure you're working with a clean surface so that your ribbon does consistently go up and down. One thing that I often forget, but I also often forget to remind other people of, is that it's always black on top, red on bottom. When you're putting your new ribbon into your typewriter, you want the black on top and the red on bottom. Please feel free to leave me down some suggestions for more videos in this Typewriter 101 series. And for the veterans of the typewriter community, please feel free to include any other tips and tricks and sources for ribbons that you might have in the comments below. So we've got a nice list of a ton of information related to typewriter ribbons all in one place. If you're interested in more typewriter content, I do have some more videos on this YouTube channel, and I also have an Instagram at just.my.typewriter. I want to thank you all so much for watching today and remind you that you're just my typewriter. Fun fact, so when I first got my Corsair Deluxe, I decided to replace the ribbon. I went to remove the ribbon spools out of the typewriter and I snapped one. So then I bought a universal replacement and I went to put that on my Corsair Deluxe, and that's when I realized that the spool size between ultra portables and portable typewriters is different. And it took me a really long time to be able to find a small enough spool to fit in that Corsair Deluxe because I didn't know what I was doing. And then I went to put them in and I snapped them again. I've messed up the ribbon on my Corsair Deluxe so many times, and there's been so many times where I've put a ribbon on a typewriter and it doesn't work and I think the typewriter's broken, but really it's just the ribbon is in there wrong. The ribbon being in the typewriter in the right way really impacts how well it works, and sometimes just switching the spools or trying and putting them on in a different way can fix the machine instantly. It's a lot of trial and error, and I still mess it up about 50% of the time that I do it. So if you mess it up a couple times, don't worry. I'm 4 years in and I'm still messing it up all the time.